I have great pleasure in introducing Professor Graeme Cooper, who many of you will know. Professor Cooper is a Professor of Taxation Law at the University of Sydney and a former New South Wales State Chairman. He's worked as a consultant to the ATO, to Treasury, to the Board of Taxation, to the OECD, to the World Bank and to the IMF. He's a frequent speaker at Tax Institute events and has written many articles in Australian and overseas journals. He was admitted to legal practice in New South Wales in 1980 and Victoria in 1999 and practiced commercial law and tax in Sydney before entering teaching. He has taught tax in law schools in Australia, Europe and the United States and holds degrees from the University of Sydney, University of Illinois and Columbia University in New York. He's once described his job to me as thinking deep thoughts, and I'm sure he'll share those with us today. Please welcome Professor Cooper.
Thank you very much, Lachlan, and thank you for sparing me the Ken Shergitt treatment. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the invitation to be here today. It's always a great pleasure to be invited to participate in the National Convention. The topic that I'm going to talk about today has evolved a little bit in my mind over the years, and the title changes every time I think about it. For this purpose, I settled on this idea of theories of modern tax reformers. But the kind of idea behind what I was asked to talk about is this. Tax reform is not going away. Maybe the things that I'll be talking about you won't see at the Tax Forum. I believe I have to call it the Tax Forum. It used to be called the Tax Summit. That doesn't wash, apparently. 87 focus groups determined that Tax Summit doesn't work. It has to be now Tax Forum. But the point that I want to try to get across to you is that whether it's this tax forum or whether it's the one after that, the tax symposium, or the one after that, the tax colloquium, or the one after that, the tax brainstorm, whatever it is, inexorably the theories about the way a good tax system are put together are changing. And in our lifetimes, we will see some pretty weird stuff. So I guess my topic, I think this is probably why I was asked to talk on this, my topic is really to talk to you about the next generation of tax. It's Star Trek in a tax context. What I'm going to talk about is the stuff that's just at the horizon, perhaps, or if it's not there, it's just a little bit over the horizon. It's coming. We probably can't avoid it. We need to be prepared to think about it. Okay? And that's, in a sense, what academics are good for. If you wanted somebody to talk you through 109RB, I'm not your guy. If you want somebody to tell you a little bit about the theories that are being taught to the people who are today's going to be Treasury officials in a couple of weeks' time, then I'm your guy. So that's, in a sense, what's driving what we're talking about. Now, let's talk a little bit about this structure. I'm going to talk a little bit about the past, okay? We have this idea that, I think it's Henry Ford, his history is bunk, but there's another great quote that I haven't bothered to source, that something like, those who don't know the lessons of history are condemned to repeat it. I guess from my point of view, and perhaps when you've heard what we talk about today, my take on history is that we should think of that as the good old days, because what's coming might be a little strange. I'll talk a little bit about the past. I'll talk a little bit about what made the past familiar, relevant, conceptual, why we think we understand what a good tax system looks like, what we thought the shapes and contours of that were going to be. I'm going to talk a little bit then about the strange learning that occurs in the groves of academe these days, the kinds of things that will be manifesting themselves in your lives before too much longer. And I'll talk a little bit about what it's going to mean for personal income tax, for humans, what it's going to mean for corporate income tax, and then we will move to drinks. That, of course, is the prize. Let's talk a little bit about the history of Henry. Politicians, particularly Wayne Swan, would have us believe that we haven't had any tax reform in this country since 1975, since the Asprey report, which I've got to say is remarkably bipartisan of him.